A trope that has been appearing in many video games that I really like is breaking the fourth wall. It makes sense for video games to do this. After all, when one of the medium's strongest advantages is its immersion, of course breaking that immersion could be very powerful when used correctly. However, something I've noticed is that many of these games save these moments for the very end, being a twist of sort. For example, Undertale has its fight against Flowey, where you corrupt your save file and takes full control. In Doki Doki Literature Club, while it is implied throughout the game how Monika is corrupting it, at the very end is where she confronts you, the player, directly. And of course, we can't forget about Earthbound, who has been doing this since 1990. So OneShot drops your first name in the first 5 minutes of gameplay. OneShot is an RPG Maker game made by Future Cat Games and was released in 2014. And it's one of the most unique gaming experiences I've ever had. This game doesn't just break the fourth wall, it abolishes it entirely. In this game, you, the person playing the game, are so integrated into the story that instead of breaking the immersion, it enhances it. This game is a genuinely great experience you won't get anywhere else. And I don't know how to describe it besides just getting into the game. So, without further ado, let's get into it. And truly, thank you for watching. OneShot starts with a young kid, Nico, finding himself waking up in a dark room. Before we continue, I should mention that there's a lot of debate online what Nico's gender is, and the developers have stated that it is up to the player's interpretation, which is cool, but it also makes it kind of hard to write this video. So I will just try to refer to him as Nico or he, him for the rest of the video, just for the sake of writing. The dark room Nico finds himself in has a computer, which after unlocking it using a password, the entity talks to you, the player, directly. And this is where it drops your name, which the game gets completely on its own. You never tell the game what your first name is. In fact, it looks onto your computer files and figures it out on its own. It's also important to mention that this window on the screen is an actual error window. No fake stuff here. The entity that we've been talking to also tells you that your goal is to help Nico leave, and that you only have one shot, which in practice means that you can't save or reload saves at any point. Every step you take and puzzle you solve is saved and cannot be undone. This is really cool, as it gives the game a lot more stakes, knowing you only have one chance. This entity talking to us through the computer will continue to help us out throughout the game and continue to motivate us to make sure Nico gets home safely. After leaving the dark room, you and Nico solve a few puzzles before finding a light bulb that turns on upon Nico holding it. With this light bulb, you can unlock a door to outside the dark building that Nico started in. Once outside, you and Nico see a purple and blue landscape and a giant tower looming over. The place Nico finds himself is the Barrens, and it's not the most welcoming place. Its landscape seems almost similar to the moon, except a lot more purple, and surrounding Nico is this large body of glowing blue water. There's also a bunch of broken down robots that don't have any power scattered around. Nico can also find some areas that are blocked off by some toxic gas, and he won't go through without a mask of some kind. I'd like to mention that this game has wonderful atmosphere and an incredible soundtrack to go with it. After exploring for a bit, Nico finds an actually working robot who starts calling him the Messiah, and that's when we start to get some answers as to what's going on. Apparently, this world's sun has died, and the world is going to die along with it unless Nico uses the light bulb he found earlier and goes up the giant tower we saw earlier and replaces the sun. The robot also mentions how you, the player, are going to guide Nico throughout his journey. It is at this point where you and Nico have a conversation. You can also change how the game will refer to you for the rest of the game. It's Jackstep, thank you very much. In this conversation with Nico, something is made very clear. You, the player of this game, are a character in it. You don't play as Nico, but rather you guide Nico throughout the game as a guardian. Throughout the game, you will also continue to have conversations with Nico, and you'll get to learn a lot more about him, which makes him a far more lovable and interesting character. You go into the building behind the robot you talk to and find a machine that looks like it's supposed to power the nearby area. However, it doesn't have a battery that it needs to in order to give power. After you explore a bit more, you find a battery, but it's broken and needs a lens of some kind to function. Without much else to do, you explore to the east, where you find another robot named Silver. However, Silver doesn't really act like a robot, but acts a lot more like a person. This is because Silver is tamed. And in OneShot, what that means is when a robot transcends its rigid programming and starts to gain more emotion and intelligence. Silver also immediately recognizes that Nico is the Messiah as well. Apparently, the prophecy of Nico replacing the sun is well known around the world. Silver gives Nico a screwdriver, which can be used with some other stuff we found to fix the battery, which can be charged using the light bulb. After putting the battery in the generator, most of the robots we found scattered around the place turn back on again. We can also now use the computer, where the entity from before tells us that we need to continue on by opening a safe that we found earlier in the game, and it also tells us where to find the password to open it. The entity tells us that this password cannot be found in this world, and that's correct. You can't find this password anywhere in the game, but instead, you have to look into your documents folder to find it, which is really cool. In the safe, there's a gas mask that we can use to progress in the areas we weren't able to before. There's also a bunch of weird glitchy squares that appear after you open it. These weird glitchy squares have been corroding the world of OneShot. They are usually blocking paths or messing up whatever touches them, and they're kind of a mystery. We also find a robot that can sail us to the next part of the game and get us closer to the tower where we can replace the sun. However, he is rusted and unable to move. By exploring around, we can find some stuff to make a strange liquid that can be used to unrust him. At this point, I should discuss the puzzles in this game. Most of this game's puzzles are solved by using various items you find around the place. And you can also get hints to figure out what to do and look around by reading various papers scattered around the Barrens. Apparently, in the Barrens, robots have been collecting blue phosphor, which they're planning to use as a possible energy replacement for the sun. I really like this method of storytelling through environmental puzzles. It makes the story flow far more organically and really immerses you into the game. Man, I wish more people design games like this. Please play my game, Go on itch.io. There's a link in my channel description. I promise you'll like it. After derusting the robot, it's about time to finally leave the Barrens. However, the boat robot's programming is faulty, and you need Silver to fix it. You have one very last sweet interaction with Silver, where you play a chess game with her. She also mentions to you that she hopes that when you replace the sun, Nico will be able to go home. But that's all before she gives you an amulet which can be used to reprogram the robot. With that, you take your leave from the Barrens and head to Glen. Glen is a complete change from the cold loneliness of the Barrens. It's lush, green, and most importantly, it has people other than robots. You even find a little village of these bird people, and I really like the designs of these guys. One of these bird people is named Calamus. I'm most definitely saying that wrong, and he seems to be looking for his sister, Alula. We'll have to keep an eye out for her. We can also find a bed where Nico can sleep at, which is another cool part of this game. Since Nico is a small child, all this walking around is really tiring him out, and every time you let him sleep, the game actually closes. This makes sense. We can only see this game through Nico's eyes, after all. When we reopen the game, we get to see some of Nico's dreams, and he's dreaming about his world that he came from before suddenly waking up in the world of OneShot. After these dreams, we usually have a short conversation with Nico, and it seems wherever world Nico comes from seems to be pretty similar to our own. He lives in a small village surrounded by wheat fields, and he also talks about how his mom used to make him really tasty looking pancakes. I love this. It makes Nico far more relatable, and it really gives me a motivation to make sure he gets back home. After the nap, we find the gate that leads to the next area. However, it's being guarded by a giant robot, who won't let us pass unless Nico signs this scroll, and we don't have anything to write with. We push forward to find some ruins, which have several things worth talking about. First, we find this strange plant spirit named Maze, who is the guardian of Glen, but after not seeing the sun in so long, she has started dying and growing harsh vines all over Glen. We let Maze borrow the light bulb for a little bit, and the vines blocking the path before are gone. This allows us to find some panels on the floor that can be stepped on to make a certain pattern. We can figure out what the correct pattern is by finding another computer in the ruins. Then the entity comes back and changes your computer's background to show the pattern needed to continue. Very cool once again. The entity's help also once again causes more of those glitchy squares to appear. It seems that they keep appearing wherever the entity influences. Once you've done this, a door unlocks revealing Alula. She's the sister that was lost from earlier, if you remember. Nico goes and reunites Alula with Calmius, and to show their gratitude, they invite you to their house. You learn that, tragically, the two siblings are orphaned and have been caring for themselves for a very long time. They give Nico something that was their father's, a golden feather. With this and some dye that you got earlier, you can form a pen so Nico can write his name on that scroll. Before you do that though, you have to get the light bulb back from Maze. But as you walk up there, you find that she has already died. All she left was a kernel that you can pick up. You go back and write your name on the scroll and leave Glen. But as you go through the passageway, a bunch of the glitchy squares start showing up again and blocking the way back. The city is by far the largest area in the game. Once again, the atmosphere here is incredible. It also seems that the city area has a lot more of those glitchy squares. You find yourself in the high parts of the city. You've been told by others in Glen that you should try to head for the city library, but the elevator leading down to the main part of the city isn't working. By the elevator, you find someone known as the Lamplighter, who's trying and failing to fix the elevator. Apparently, the panel is missing a button, so you and Nico need to go find a new one. While exploring, you find several places like a cafe and greenhouse, but more importantly, you also find a special garden set aside for your kernel you picked up from Maze. This is where you can actually regrow Maze from earlier as an optional side quest, and it gives you a special achievement at the end of the game if you complete it. Eventually, you can fix the elevator panel and head down to the lower parts of the city. Also, the elevator ride down is made really funny and awkward by the Lamplighter, and I really like this guy. He's awesome. The lower parts of the city are quite expansive and overwhelming. I think that this was probably done intentionally by the developers. While searching for the library, you go through a strange back alleyway where you meet this weird talking fox. The fox tells you that now isn't the right time to talk, but if you can find a way to come back, you and Nico should. This is quite weird. You find the library, and from what you learn, the head librarian should be able to help you get up to the tower and replace the sun. Around the library, everyone seems to be talking about this guy called the Author. Apparently, he was this great inventor who went around on his flying ship and studied the world. You continue, but the head librarian is blocked by a robot who won't let you pass without a library card. So, while searching for a library card, you head to the laboratories, where you find Kip, who looks strangely similar to Silver from the Barrens. Apparently, she was the one who invented Silver, and invented her off of her personality, but she abandoned her after she went rogue after being tamed. Kip gives you her library card, and you are able to take a picture of Nico and glue it onto it. With this, you can go to the head librarian, George. The interesting thing about George is that her personality changes between 6 different ones, which is set at the beginning of the game. Nico gives George a book written in a dead language that we found all the way back in the Barrens, and apparently it was written by the author himself, explaining how to get into the tower, and it says that you need 3 parts of the sun, aka things containing yellow phosphor, which is what the old sun was made of. You already have 2, the amulet and the golden feather. George hands you a die, which is the last thing you will need before going to the tower. However, before you head there, Nico tells you that he's hungry, which is fair since Nico hasn't eaten anything since he got here. You head up to the cafe that I mentioned earlier, where the person running it makes Nico some pancakes. This makes Nico remember his mother, and it makes him sad. It seems the pressure has been really building on him, and who could really blame him? He's just a kid. He has to have the pressure of saving a world. After another discussion with Nico, you head to the bottom of the tower, and you must close the game window to progress. But when you reopen it, strange things start to happen. Nico finds himself in a dark void, and for some reason, he can't communicate with you anymore. He finds a computer again, where the entity tells Nico that his journey is over, and that he should rest. The entity also tells Nico that you've left him, and that you're gone, which is obviously not true because you're watching him right now. Nico goes to sleep before the entity tells you, the player, that we're done here before closing the window. And every time you reopen the game, you just see the same screen of Nico sleeping before the game closes again. Obviously, something isn't right. You go into the game's files where you find a new thing to select, a weird clover-shaped file. With this being opened, you can go back into the game and wake Nico up before going through a doorway. The entity is not happy about this. Nico finds himself in these weird rooms where it's not obvious what needs to be done. Luckily, the file we used earlier pops up as a new window, and when overlaid over a clover with the game's window, we can be used to show the way forward. Each of these windows that pops up also have some text on you, talking to you, the player, directly once again. This text is from the author we mentioned earlier, who invented the entity. It was supposed to help you and Nico on your journey, but it had contradictions in its own code and wanted nothing else but self-annihilation. This explains why all that glitchy stuff has been showing up every time the entity helps us out. It's contradicting itself. The entity wants Nico to break the new sun, so that way the world will die along with it. But here's the problem. Nico's only connection to this world is the light bulb, so the only way he can go home is if he breaks it. The author reveals the obvious yet horrible truth. You can only save one. Either bring Nico back to his homeworld or save the world you've explored with Nico. After this section, you continue to climb up the tower where the entity confronts you once more. It tells you that the only moral thing to do is to save Nico. He's the only real part of this world anyways, so he's the only thing worth saving. You reach an elevator and continue to go up the tower. Here, you can have one final conversation with Nico, where the game gives you the choice of telling Nico about his fate or not. In this playthrough, I personally chose to tell him. Nico personally doesn't know what to do either, so he leaves the decision into your hands. It's a hard choice, with a lot of emotion behind it, but because everybody in the world will die without it, and if Nico puts it there, he should be able to live with them, I personally chose to save the world. If you picked the Save the World ending, then you get a lovely credit scene, where the people of this game's world look outside and see the sun. And you even get to see a small version of Maze start to grow if you did that side quest. At this point, I should mention that OneShot has another ending after you've completed the main game, which was added in by the developers after many people who played the original felt dissatisfied with the ending. This is called the Solstice route, and I will not be covering it in this video. To be completely honest, this video is already way past the scope of what I usually do, and I don't want to add any more. Maybe I'll cover the Solstice route in a different video if people want me to, but otherwise I guess you'll have to play it yourself, which I highly recommend doing because if you've liked this video so far, I bet you'll love it, and why spoil more of the game for yourself? All in all, OneShot is one of the most unique games I've ever played. And even though I've seen many other games attempt the fourth wall breaking story, I don't think I've seen any get even close to what OneShot had going for it. And I kinda love the tragic ending of having to choose between Nico and the world. It adds a new twist to the already interesting gimmick of you only have one chance. Once again changes if you play Solstice. Thank you for watching all the way through. Subscribe or share with a friend if you enjoyed, and I hope you have a wonderful day.